neuroscience, quantum physics, biology, plant medicine, non-dual tantric meditative practices. We will be exploring these concepts with experts to provide insight. Get ready to melt reality with us.
Dr. Felix Blei holds a PhD in microbiology, and he's an expert in natural products, especially alkaloids. Following his PhD, Felix developed the first quantitative rapid tests, Q-tests, for psilocybin. He expanded the Q-test system for drugs like LSD, MDMA, and others. He subsequently founded Miraculix, a spin-off from the university which researches further test procedures and makes test kits available to users. In cooperation with the addiction support organization in Thuringia, he developed the first state-run integrative mobile drug checking service called Alive, which he has successfully managed for 4 years as its scientific director. Dr. Blei was a co-founder of Mimosa, where he was responsible for the analysis of natural substances and the development of new approaches for the sustainable and cost-effective cultivation of psychedelic mushrooms.
Welcome, Felix. It's just wonderful to have you join us today. So one of the things we are exploring on our podcast is what psychedelics are and what happens to our perception of reality when using these various substances. It would be wonderful if you would start our conversation by sharing what it is about science that moved you when you were young and how that informed your work with psychedelics.
So at first, really thank you for the introduction here, and also that I'm introduced and able to speak about basically my previous work. So it's really an honor for me. Thank you. So I was originally born in the GDR, so the socialistic half of Germany in the past. And I was really grown up in a really microfield environment. So it was totally normal for me and my whole family to go in the autumns in the forest and collect all these edible mushrooms, prepare them, also dry them for the storage for the winter. And I even sold them on the streets for pocket money as a children. So I directly come early in contact with these edible mushrooms, but also in the awareness of poisonous mushrooms. And I also had the luck that my father was has a doctorate in biology. So I always had an access to natural science, which led me to also a collection of own cacti and plant rarities. So I always knew that I wanted to study biology or medicine. And after a social year in the hospital, it was clear for me to do a bachelor in biology. And later I focused on microbiology.
Fantastic. So as a neuroscientist, Felix, I'm fascinated by your research. Now, you did your core research on psilocybin, and we've talked a lot about psilocybin on the show, but can you tell our listeners a little bit about psilocybin, sort of where it's found, and what its psychedelic properties are?
Definitely, this was basically what my PhD thesis was about psilocybin. And it's a very simple natural substance from a chemical point of view, but it also has some interesting or exciting structural groups. So the base from psilocybin is an indole ring. This is like the basic structure, and an important structural group is the hydroxylation and also the phosphate group and the fourth position of the indole ring. That's where it gets interesting, and the whole structure is really similar to serotonin, a neurotransmitter in our brain. And this also explains why it acts on the 5-HTA2A receptor. And we already know that's the main reason for the psychedelic effects, the action on these receptors. But it also seems not only to let the brain feel more, it's more like it dampened more areas of the brain, which lead to these experiences of the users. And it's important to know that psilocybin is just the prodrug So after the oral uptake, the psilocybin gets dephosphorylated into psilocin. So this is the main active compound we actually talking about. And psilocybin is more like an unstable storage form what the mushroom uses. So together with the phosphorylation, it has a really high heat tolerance, and the psilocin can be really easy polymerized. That's actually the blue color you see if you press one of the psilocybin-containing mushrooms. It's a polymer of psilocin molecules, and this reaction does not go back. So the mushrooms try to really protect all his psilocybin and phosphorylate it. And this molecule can be found in really, and that's where it gets interesting, in mostly every country in the world. There's over 200 different species out of different genera which contain these mushrooms. So there seems to be a huge ecological advantage for these mushrooms to produce this molecule. And we are talking about concentrations up to 2-3%. So really a lot, and 2-3% on the dry biomass. So that's really a lot for mushrooms. And currently in the moment, and to end this, there's really just some hypotheses about what mushrooms are, why they need this psilocybin. So there's not a clear answer on why these mushrooms produce this molecule.
That's great. That's perfect, Felix. That really gives it some good background. Now we're going to talk a little bit about in a few minutes about chemical analysis. So psilocybin was first isolated by the famous Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann in the late 50s. But I understand that you were successfully able to synthesize the molecule. Can you tell us a little bit about your synthetic process and how it's notable, and how you see the pharmaceutical industry utilizing psilocybin in a controlled environment?
So yeah, what I did was a biocatalytic production. So I used the natural enzymes of the mushrooms, and I can combine these enzymes with other enzymes, which provides the precursor for the biosynthesis of psilocybin. So you can imagine it a little bit like this. I mix all the enzymes together, just add the precursor for hydroxyindole, leave it on my table for 2 hours, and then I have pure psilocybin. And this has a huge advantage against the chemical synthesis, for example, in the needs of heavy metals or other dangerous solvents. So it's pretty much less dangerous, and also the ecological impact is better than the chemical synthesis. These enzymes I use for the biocatalysis, they are produced by E. coli. So I basically just have to feed sugars to let my enzymes grow. And this process is really suitable for the GMP production. So you can produce this in really large quantities in bioreactors, and it's good for standardized production of psilocybin, especially for the therapeutic usage. Because it's also quite expensive to produce it that way. But because it's really standardized, you can really use it in these GMP environments.
That's amazing. And I think the pharmaceutical industry will be changed forever with the introduction of medicines like psilocybin. In fact, my brother struggled with schizophrenia and manic depressive disorder. And I want to know if you see psilocybin playing a role in the treatment of psychiatric disorders such as depression and anxiety, and what your insight is about that.
Definitely, and that's currently already a lot of clinical research being done. So when we look on psilocybin, there's different studies and in different clinical phases, from clinical phase 1 to 3. And it's not only depression and anxiety. There are a lot of other, I would say, mainly mental problems, such as addictions for opiates or even just nicotine. But also like disordered body perceptions. So there's a lot of research being done in the moment. And if you, we do always nice feedback rounds on our Instagram channel. So we try to bring all the research papers which are coming out. So if you want to have a deeper look, there's, for example, an infographics where we show which clinical study is in which phase currently right now. But it's really promising. So a lot of studies are in phase 2 or 3. For example, in our country, in Germany, there was currently the biggest study with psilocybin on patients, and it was called the episode study. So there's a lot of research being done, and hopefully we see, as in Oregon, more and more countries or states where the change of the laws are made to allow these therapeutic usage.
Yeah, and Felix, you talked about how psilocybin enlivens an area of cognition and then quiets other areas of the brain. Can you talk a little bit about the effects on the brain as it relates to phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical research, and what consumers can hope could happen when they take psilocybin?
At first, I think it's always important to mention it's not a miraculous drug which will just heal everyone.
Right.
Just important to bring this in context, because all these people have a strong hope on this medicine. And what you hear in therapy often is like that people say, "You are my last chance, and if not, I will just go suicide me." And that's not a good start for therapy. It can definitely help a portion of the people. Especially with these disorders. And there's a lot of research being done. And the interesting thing is behind what researchers found are that there are new connections being made between neurons. And this is something we can already show on an image level. So you can see directly after the intake that there are new connections being made. And this is what actually these people with the mental problems help to come out of their states. I guess I will talk a little bit later about how I think how this works. But it's important to know that it's always in a context also of a therapeutic context. It doesn't need to be a doctor, but it needs to be in a setting like that. And yeah, so just as a short start, I can add more to this answer if you want.
I think that's great, Felix. I think it's a perfect segue, and we will get back to it. But for now, we'd like to talk a little bit about your company, Miraculix. Did I say that right? Miraculix?
Yeah, it's called Miraculix, and we're always getting asked on where this name comes from, and it's an interesting story. It's Miraculix is I'm not sure if you know the children's tale of Asterix and Obelix. It's a painted book, and there's a druid. It's called Miraculix, and he has a magic potion. And there's a small village out of Germans resisting the Roman Empire, and it's because they have this magic potion. And this druid always takes care that everyone just takes the right amount, and so everyone gives everyone the right dosage, and in the right dosage, it makes you strong. But you can never have two potions. And so that's the basic idea is behind that Miraculix checks for the amount of the potions, and this is really important. And based on that, we chosen this name, and somehow everyone liked it, and that's how it was born.
I love it. That's great, and thanks for that. It's always great to get the origin story of a company name. Yeah. So, I can't do it with the German accent, but what is Miraculix? What kind of advice and what is the mission of Miraculix to provide to nature-based product analysis and genetic engineering of natural forming chemicals? So how do you see these efforts disrupting the pharmaceutical industry?
So Miraculix is a spin-off of the university in Jena, and it was primarily formed to make the testing methods accessible to the general public. As we developed them with a grant in the university directly for building a startup. So this was what a grant was made for. And then after we were quite successful with making these test products in the university, we needed a company outside of the university to just market them because we already felt the huge impact they could have on the market, on people's life. It was not actually that easy because a lot of people doesn't believe in our let's say business strategy. We heard a lot of does people really take drugs? Does everyone need this as answers in, let's say, business competitions or something like that? And at the same time, after we formed Miraculix, me and also many of my colleagues, we have gathered a lot of knowledge about extraction, synthesis, analysis of psychedelic substances in the recent years. So in the university, I'm able to work with these substances on a legal basis. So it's almost 10 years working on psilocybin and other narcotics, let's say. And and this includes really interesting research like doing a magic yeast. So we made a yeast which produced actually psilocybin, and all this knowledge we now try also to spread around. So you can get like just like a scientific consulting from us. That's the same stuff as we published before, like publishing the biosynthesis of psilocybin. We now try to help to others with our knowledge we already have on especially these molecules nobody or not so many people are able to work on.
It's so cool. And so your company not only looks at psilocybin and creates tests for that substance, but do I understand you also work with like THC and CBD and MDMA? And can you talk about your research and your test kits or approach to testing those dosages?
So I first really developed in the lab the instrumental analysis for psilocybin with an HPLC and with a mass spec behind, and I realized that I'm mainly the only one in basically Germany which are able and allowed to test, and was really quite exclusively. But what is with the majority of the population which is maybe interested in a recreational use? And after the first publications, we made also some press releases in, let's say, more common newspapers. And we received really, really a lot of requests from people outside who wanted to use mushrooms for their depressions and other. And so they always ask us how much to take. And so I really came up with the idea of a simple color test to determine the content, because there's always a dose before therapy. And at the end of my PhD, I found also other molecules which could have an interact with the psilocybin. So we are talking about more of a full spectrum here. So always note that there will be two ways, like the therapeutic way with just a single psilocybin. That's where I made a synthesis route for. But there will be also always people which just use their product with its full spectrum, let's say like as fruiting bodies or as a full spectrum extract. So I felt the need of a tool for just measuring these quantities. And yeah, I could grow them in the lab, and even under standardized condition, they had once 1%, and under the same conditions, the next time 2%. If you compare two mushrooms next to each other, they can have a really big difference from the same flush. So I saw these fluctuations, and it was really hard to give an advice how much is in mushrooms. And so this was where the idea was born when I wrote my PhD thesis, that I really felt the need of that. So I went back to the lab, made my first proof of concept. And after this worked quite fine, we directly thought there's a need on other psychedelics as well. So basically, yeah, we started with the psychedelics. So we developed a quantitative test for LSD, for example, in blotters or liquids, while also for MDMA in pressed tablets, which are a huge problem in Europe, that you have the same pill with the same logo, and it can have 50 milligrams or 350 milligrams. And actually, a lot of children died on that. And this was huge in the media this year. So yeah, there's a lot of attention on this different pills, and that's what we develop at Miraculix. And to sum it up, our mission is really to empower people to make self-determined decisions, but they are based on informations, and we provide the tools for doing that. So it's then up for the individual to decide for themselves. That's the basic mission behind Miraculix.
I mean, honest to goodness, what an incredible offering for the psychedelic movement, for individuals, for every parent who worries about their kids' experimental phase. It's really a gift, Felix, that you're giving to this movement. So, I thank you, and I know our listeners are going to be thrilled to learn about your tests.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm also really strongly about open science. That's why I published all these papers really openly. So we made no patents behind that. And so everyone on the world can now work with these enzymes, make their own biocatalytic routes on that. And the idea is really that if everyone works together on the same topic, the outcome is much bigger than just individuals which work on this topic.
All right, so let's segue to microdosing. So first, why don't you describe for our listeners what microdosing is?
So yeah, microdosing is in a scientific sense refers actually to a dosage which should be not noticeable. That's a definition I can give you, but unfortunately, there's not a real scientific definition which is accepted by everyone. It's not properly defined. I support the definition of a microdose being 10% of an actual therapeutic dosage. And for psilocybin, the most commonly used dosage would be 25 milligrams in a therapeutic setting. So I would support the definition of being like 2.5 milligrams then a microdose for psilocybin. So it's individual for every compound, but with the 10% rule, you can get a good feeling of this should be actually a dose which you should not feel, because this is like 10% of the actual dose.
So what should a microdoser be made aware of? What should a microdoser think about? And how do your test kits help your users with microdosing?
At first there are different dosing protocols outside, but also very little data about it. Maybe it's good to at first say there are not many double-blind data, so it's not really easy to make a final decision on what benefits microdosing give and which dosing schedule to follow. But however, we know that some studies are on the way, so it remains really exciting. And a lot of reports from people suggest that they achieved some good results, at least with microdosing. And and what I already said, like before every therapeutic use, there's always a dosage. And also for a microdose, you need to know what a dose is actually to reduce the dose to a microdose. Which you cannot feel. So it's especially important for that. And we have some experiences with that as we're doing drug checking in the last 4 years. So for example, LSD tends to always have almost to have just half of the amount which was advertised. But in 10% of the cases, there are still really strong samples. So we had some interesting results when people had just had a 30 microgram blotter and divided into 20 small squares, and at the end there was basically not that much on one blotter. Or people the total difference, they got a really strong blotter and noticed the effects. So yeah, especially for microdosing, you can test, for example, one blotter, or make a solution of that, test one drop of the solution, and then you directly know how much is in one drop of your microdose solution in the future.
That makes perfect sense. All right. So what about bad trips? So first of all, why don't you define for us or tell us what people generally mean by bad trips, and then tell us, is there any value to your technology in terms of helping people with bad trips?
Um, so there's a lot of rumors about bad trips. On a definition, a bad trip is an acute but very negatively experienced state of due to an intoxication of, for example, magic mushrooms, and it can be come together with a severe anxiety. You can have panic attacks. You can have loss of self-perception, a depersonalization, derealization, but for example, also a fear of death. And this is also for a lot of people, it's important to have the right set and setting. So this can be avoided with through a good preparation, a good set and setting, and also the substance needs to be also really prepared, and that's what our tutors are good for. If you know the dosage of, for example, what I said with the magic mushrooms, you don't really know how much is inside these mushrooms. But with this tool, you have really the, the way of deciding yourself how much of the dosage you want to have. On some websites in the internet, you can already find on which dosage levels you can experience which kind of hallucination or altered state. And so people doesn't have to start with really the strong dose. With this tool, they can decide themselves to start lower and rising with time. And this is not based on luck. And this is what usually happens with mushrooms. It's usual they feel nothing, or it's too strong for the people. And now you can really decide to have a specific amount of dosage here.
So great. It's amazing. So here's our commercial plug. Exploring Reality, maybe listeners, if you're planning on dosing at any time soon, Felix's test not only shows whether a certain substance is present within what you're going to take, but it also provides information about the concentration levels. A valid result is available in 15 to 30 minutes, and you will find a link in our show notes to order your test right away. We invite you to know your dose. We want you safe. We want you to have a positive experience. And this is the best solution for you as you experiment and journey with psychedelics and other substances.
All right. So, Felix, we're starting to see FDA-regulated products enter the marketplace. So ketamine clinics are now legal in the United States and around the world. Just last week, the MAPS Public Benefit Corporation filed an application with the United States FDA to approve their psychedelic drug MDMA in combination with therapy, with psychotherapy, to treat post-traumatic stress disorder. I understand you may have a personal experience you would want to share about your own journey with psychedelics that kind of informs this landscape and this sort of explosion of products entering the marketplace.
I would really love to share more like a funny story, how I came to psychedelics, actually, how I came to my PhD, if you want. So I was on a really nerdy mushroom hunt with a lot of professors. I even took my girlfriend with me and said it will be a vacation thing. And so the whole day we collected mushrooms in the outside, and the afternoon and the nights we microscopied them and had talks about them. And we were outside in the Bavarian Alps. And I said to my girlfriend, just look, there's a cow field, and I strongly expect there will be growing psilocybin semilanceata. And it took me like 5 minutes, 10 minutes to collect a full, 2 full hands of these mushrooms. And I went to all these professors with the long beards and showed them my find. And half of them were really excited, and the other half not, and were a little bit grumpy. And the other half was like, "Oh my God, that's the mushroom find of the week." We directly went back, microscopied them, and so after this mushroom hunt, one of the professors, Dirk Hoffmeister, just called me and asked me if I want to come in his office. And he said to me it was a long dream of him already to research. He's let's say the master of basidiomycetes. So he researches natural products out of mushrooms you can eat, like the edible mushroom, like you can see, and forest. It's hard to explain basidiomycetes in a normal language. But yeah, it was just the most logical thing to do also the magic mushrooms, as he researched also all the other natural products. So we had this idea, and directly after the mushroom hunt, and I started my PhD in this conversation, or I said like, yeah, I want to do my PhD about that. So it's really a funny story that this mushroom actually found me, and not found the topic. Actually, they led me in all these in all these stories. So I always like to tell this story. That's actually the mushrooms show me the way.
I love it. Oh my God, I love it. And how lucky were you to have such professors around you to really understand this gift that was shown to you. You know, we always talk to our guests about based on their journey and their expertise, what they think the ego is. Exploring reality maybe is all about perception and the perception of reality. And so I wanted to ask you that question is, in your work, what do you think happens to the ego? How do we understand the mind, intellect, and ego, and the dissolving of sort of more concretized, rigid reality when using psilocybin and other substances?
That's a really hard question. For me, I try to think about, and so for me, the ego is how we see ourselves, but it also strongly determines how we interact with our environment, and it's already influenced by parenting, but also by all the people which surround us in currently, and also by the experiences we have made, positive but also negative experiences. And so, however, the influence of psilocybin and also other psychedelics can lead to a reduction of these ego. So it will be never a complete disappearance, like people call it ego death. So because you still always have at least remember your experiences. So there's never a complete loss of your ego, but this big reduction. And this reduction can help people to overcome negative experiences from their past. It can help people to be more self-critical and open, and to break out of, let's say, typical thought patterns they have. And this is typical for many mental illnesses like depressions or eating disorders or addictions. So actually, what psilocybin is doing is reducing this ego and helping you with yourself. It's just a tool, and it just shows you some ways. And after the experience, you still have to work on yourself, on your own ego, but it's a really great tool to show you a side behind the things you typically tend to see or to experience. I hope this fits it.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, it's fascinating.
So Felix, what's next for you? Tell us a little bit about what your research interests are moving forward, and what you're thinking about next.
So I'm really interested in the entourage effect of mushrooms, or ensemble effect of the different alkaloids which are made present. So I just developed and together with the Berlin Charité, we're going to research these. And we do this if we integrate these questionnaires together with our test kits. So people are able to tell us their test results, the strain, and then also their experience. And we try to make a really, really easy questionnaire and tried to limit it in 3 dimensions and not into 5 dimensions. So the next step is actually the validation of these tests, of this questionnaire together with the normal 5D ASC. And then we really want to research different effects, maybe different mushrooms can have. And that's what a lot of people report on different species or even between different strains of the same species, like in cubensis. And so this is one thing which really drives me to make research on, let's say, the entourage effect. For cannabis, it took like over 20 years to make this statement after basically everyone reported it already. And yeah, I developed already a lot of new Q tests. So we always try them for at least 1 or 2 years in our drug checking. So people can, this year we're going to release, for example, a Q test on 2CB, but also on amphetamine. And the most interesting, I guess, on fentanyl. So it will be the first quantitative test kit which shows you how much fentanyl is in your sample. And that's really for people to not die. And these are currently in the prototype phase and going to be tested in the US. So yeah, a lot of new Q tests coming soon, but also qualitative reagents, for example, on N-bombs. And so what we do is always to develop new reagents, which we really felt the need for in our drug checking. That's where we get really good insights. And so the goal is to develop tools for everyone, because even in countries where drug checking is made from the state, just a small number of people are able to submit their samples. And with these tools, you can already screen your sample for the interesting ones. So what we try is to combine them together with instrumental analysis. So that's our goal really here in Germany. I can tell you shortly. So in Thuringia, we are able to do it in the 4th year already. We are paid by the state. So that's a really great thing. And now even the laws are changing, maybe due to our work as well. So this will be maybe the first year where we can make a stationary testing. So in the past, we just did it mobile. So we told nobody we go drug checking, because then the police had to come. And this is we did it more like on a gray zone level. So people tested themselves, we advertised them, but it's always combined with an intervention. So people get all the useful tools about their substances, all the informations which are important for harm reduction and safer use. And this is due to a cooperation with the Thuringian drug addiction. So this is our project. We are on parties and festivals. People can check their substances. And hopefully this year we achieve to have really the first stationary analysis. So people can come to our office and are protected by the law, that the police will not come and catch them after they leave our office. And all these data we produce is evaluated by the Berlin Charité, and we hope that the publication follows soon. So this is the data collection is ready, and the publication will come in the next couple of months to show everyone how important these tools are and how many lives can be saved, and also other stuff like we see a lot of people with a critical use of substances. We have in direct contact to them and can intervene already before they are chronic users and stuff like that. And people really love the possibility to just talk with us and tell. So they all believe just rumors they tell each other. Nobody checks websites and reads informations. So they love to have people they can just talk to and get experiences on on a total neutral scientific base, so nobody gets blamed for drug use. In our case, we are an accepted drug checking program. So yeah, and maybe last thing, I'm also we also funded a new mimosa company, where we grow medical mushrooms in or just redo this last sentences.
Yeah.
The last thing is we also funded a new company for the cultivation of medical mushrooms in bioreactors. And this is together already again with Alan Rockefeller and a full team of experts in the field. And we have made a big discovery that could change the medical mushroom market. And already manufacturing and working on the manufacturing and the scale up of the production, and basically currently looking on strategic partners on that. So if anyone is interested, just write me an email. Yeah.
What's the unique focus of that chemical or that discovery?
So the basic point is that we are able to grow these mushrooms also in liquid. That's you can skip all these plastic bag, soil
Mm,
thing, no heavy metals, nothing
wow.
out of China. So you have a standardized product you can control. And I'm able, and that's what I did at Mimosa. I developed the method for the production of these magic mushrooms in liquid culture. So you can produce a high amount of alkaloids in a short time under really standardized conditions with a full spectrum.
Well, we'll have to have you back to really tell us more about that. That's terrific.
I would love to, for sure.
Felix, can you share with our audience? I mean, you're such an expert in this, and it's just amazing to share this conversation with you. Can you share the domain, the link that they can go to learn about the Q text? And it'll also be in our show notes, but I think at this point it might be really helpful just for you to share that.
So our main website is miraculix-lab.de/en. So it's we also have a web shop where you can order the test kits, and it's webshop.miraculix-lab.com.
Okay, so that's going to be on our show notes. Yeah.
Maybe the Instagram account is more important.
Okay.
And on Instagram, it's also just Miraculix Lab.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. So you can find that in the show notes. Felix, David and I would just love to thank you for being with us today. Like, you've just been incredible and so insightful. And we truly have offered the psychedelic movement a gift with you being here and with the access to the Q tests and with just all your knowledge. So please, listeners, if you're out there, go to Felix's Instagram, where there's research and all sorts of information, and we'll also have that in our show notes. So thank you very much for listening, and we are super excited to learn such incredible science.
Thank you so much, Felix.
Thanks for the invitation and the chance to talk about magic mushrooms in my tests. I always love to do that. Bye.
I recently had a psychedelic experience with synthetic mushrooms consumed through chocolate bars. Each flavor had a different dosage and experience. I chose the M&M flavor, which had 4 grams divided into 12 chocolate pieces. My friend and I split the bar, initially taking 4 pieces and waiting 30 minutes before consuming the remaining 2. During the trip, there was an awkward silence between us, which was unusual, possibly due to our tendency to focus on entertaining each other rather than exploring our own thoughts and feelings. Surprisingly, music didn't have the same impact on me as it did in my previous natural psychedelic trips. Around the 2-hour mark, a person with psychedelic experience came to our door. We engaged in a conversation and sought guidance to find contentment in the moment. However, after they left, I realized something strange about myself. Being so focused on others, I discovered that I couldn't understand English and struggled with basic cognitive tasks. It felt like I was experiencing a psychotic break, although I later realized this was just part of the experience. In summary, my recent psychedelic experience with synthetic shrooms through chocolate bars had unique aspects compared to my previous natural trips. The trip was marked by an awkward silence, diminished impact of music, and a temporary loss of cognitive function.
Today's meditation is called The Universe is Blissful. I'd like you to come into your inner meditative place with your eyes closed. Feel this very beautiful, familiar terrain. And I'd like for you just to take a nice breath in and let it out. Take another breath in and let it out. I'd like for you just to relax your eyes a little bit. Let your tongue relax in your mouth. Let your heart and lungs slow down a little and your belly relax. Just sit here in this beautiful, familiar, internal place and feel yourself not in the past or the future, just sitting right here. Not in the past, not in the future. I want you to feel as your senses arise, your thoughts are come and go, your perceptions of sound, taste, touch, whatever arises, just let it all go like clouds. Just observe in this beautiful, familiar place. As thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions arise, let them go like clouds. Be the observer in your own self of your reality without getting lost in the story, without attaching to memory and history. Just observe as thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions arise. Whoa. You're a sensory processor in this moment. That is all you really are. That is all we are. The job, the tools of the mind, intellect, and ego create separation, create a subject-object experience. So when they quiet, you become a sensory processor in the moment. No past, no future, no worry. So sit here without thinking and observe as thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions arise. There's nothing to do. Don't allow thoughts to interrupt. Mantra means to feel reality as a sensory processor. Feel what's arising. How exquisite, how blissful, how delicious. Just feel As things arise, let them go. Observe, don't think. You're here in the moment, and the only thing that matters is this blissful state of observing as things arise. When your thoughts quiet, you are bliss, contentment. You are home. And begin to come out of this meditation now by wiggling your toes a little and your fingers, by taking a slightly deeper breath in and out. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes. This is where you come to when things are rough, when things are not, people are not saying the truthful things about you, when you're cut out of a group that you want to be in, when there's bullying, when there's mean bosses or work colleagues, or your challenges at home. Come here. Come to where the past and the future don't matter, where you're in present awareness. And I want to tell you that I've met people who live here most of the time. So this life is a choice, and we can live in the mind, intellect, and ego, in the stories, in the drama of reality. Or we can sit calmly as an observer and let all those stories just float by. So thank you so much for being with me in this meditation of bliss. I look forward to seeing you in the next practice. Miraculix is a small and independent company that has created the first quantifiable home test called Q-test for anyone taking mushrooms or psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, and any other psychoactive substance. So think about this. You're at home, you're with friends, you're hanging out, and you're experimenting with these amazing psychoactive plant medicines, and yet you don't really know the dosage. Miraculix is here to help you really have a positive experience so that you don't overdose. Created by Dr. Felix Blei of Germany. Please go on our show notes and order this package. They're now available in the USA, and we couldn't be more excited to represent this home kit, because we want you to have a truly positive experience with psychoactives to explore your own reality and the way these psychoactives can help you in your life.
Exploring Reality Maybe is written, produced, fact-checked, and edited by Jody R. Weiss and David Schwartz. Research support is provided by Semicolon Connects. Music produced by Nextbox. Visit our website at exploringrealitymaybe.org to find show notes, transcripts, bios, and to learn more. If you like the show, please visit our website to donate.